Starfield mods are here. The game already has a couple hundred mods available for it. And in this video, I'm going to show you some of the good ones. Because yes, there are already a variety of very good Starfield mods out there. I'll be showing you how to get more FPS in the game, remove some of those more controversial features, and hey, we even have some mods changing up gameplay in a fairly dramatic way already. And if you're a Game Pass player, stick around to the end of this one. We're going to talk about why you may have some limited modability options if you're playing on Game Pass. But if you are embarking on your modding journey, the first mod you really need to download is Achievement Enabler. By default, after installing certain mods or even just using certain console commands, achievements for Starfield are disabled, but this mod will re-enable them. I even tested this mod on one of my saves that did have achievements disabled because I had to use a console command to get around a bugged quest, and thankfully I was able to earn achievements again. But have you also noticed that Starfield just seems to have some rather odd colors? Some places just look bizarrely green or even brown. Thankfully, the mod Neutral LUTs is going to fix that. This mod effectively removes color filters from Starfield, so the game overall is going to have a more neutral and I think just more real looking visuals. One of the most notable changes with this mod is Aquila City. You can really see how bizarrely brown everything was before, but now you have really nice bright blue skies, as well as you can start to see the color in signs and much more. The mod will have a varying effect depending on the visuals of the planet you're currently on, so in New Atlantis things weren't that dramatically different, but I do definitely feel like this mod makes some of the greenery just look a bit more lush and alive in Starfield. Overall, something like this is going to be a subjective mod, but for me personally, I think the visual changes brought with this one are really stunning. I think for a lot of people, this is going to become a must download, and it all comes at zero cost to performance, and it's really easy to uninstall at any time. But speaking of performance, Starfield's performance is unfortunately not the best. Many users, even on high-end PCs, can't achieve over 60 FPS in major cities, me being one of those. But fortunately, even just a day after early access, a variety of performance mods have come out for the game. Most notably, these being mods adding NVIDIA DLSS to Starfield, because as of right now, the game only officially supports AMD's FSR2. PureDark has the most popular option right now. His Starfield Upscaler mod will add in functionality for both DLSS and Intel's XeSS. Some users report nearly doubling their FPS with this mod installed, potentially going from 30 FPS to 60 FPS. And in general, if you're using a weaker GPU from NVIDIA, the DLSS bump can be massive here, although that isn't going to apply to everyone. In my comparisons, you can see I'm seeing either a very small or even no FPS bump at all. Like at most, it's just a couple of extra frames here and there. The reason for this is because I'm using a 4090. I'm not GPU limited in Starfield. The reason I'm getting 55 FPS in major cities is due to my CPU, and DLSS won't help that, at least not DLSS 2.0. On PureDark's Patreon right now, there is a beta build of this mod with support for DLSS 3.0, aka frame generation. So literally just by installing that plugin, I immediately got a 20 FPS bonus across the entire game. All of a sudden in each of the major cities, I'm in the mid 70s instead of the mid 50s. And when out adventuring on random planets, I'm getting near or even above 100 FPS, which feels awesome. And really with my specific setup, it feels like it's that quintessential FPS bump, going from just under 60 to comfortably over it. And you can really feel the FPS difference when you get into some combat encounters and faster paced gameplay. But as I mentioned earlier, this is only available on PureDark's Patreon right now, meaning that there is a $5 paywall for the DLSS 3.0 version. And of course, to actually use DLSS 3.0, you must own an NVIDIA 4000 series GPU. But if you don't, if you are just going to use the free DLSS 2.0 mod, maybe don't. There's actually another option out there from Luke FC, this being far less popular, but still functionally incredibly similar to PureDark's mod. And for me, DLSS 2.0 with Luke FC's mod actually got me more FPS compared to PureDark's version. I'll have links to both mods down below. You of course have a couple of options for improving your FPS depending on what your specific setup is, but if you do have an NVIDIA GPU, I would highly recommend at least trying out the free versions of these mods. As for some GPUs, DLSS will make a huge difference over FSR2. And it's pretty wild, just one day after early access, modders have already implemented DLSS into Starfield, which Bethesda for some bizarre reason has chosen not to do. Thankfully, modders coming to the rescue yet again. And hey, if you're still having performance issues in game, you could even try downloading potato graphics to really get an FPS bump. Unfortunately though, Bethesda for some reason continues to make the same mistakes. They literally patched in an FOV slider to Fallout 76 after a bunch of fan complaints, but didn't add one to Starfield. But modders have come to the rescue here as well. There's a few FOV mods out there, but my personal favorite is the in-game FOV Changer. This will enable you to change either your first person or your third person FOV to any value between 70 and 120, and you can do this in increments of 5. It's a really handy one because you could see the change without having to relaunch the game, so you could test out a few different FOVs to see which is right for you with this game. The mod works via console commands, and basically the author set up a bunch of bat files so you could run each one and see the FOV changes in real time. One of the biggest complaints I've seen for Starfield, even since we got the first real gameplay of the game, was some of the HUD pop-ups. Bethesda has things like locations and even XP appearing right in the center of your screen. With locations, this completely obscures your view, which really doesn't make all that much sense and really sucks in combat. BetterHUD is going to fix that. Now both new locations and XP will appear much smaller and towards the bottom of your screen, overall just having a much more compact and fitting placement. And if you want to take things even further with this mod, there are a ton of optional add-ons as well. You could also remove hit markers or even enemy health bars to really get an immersive experience in game, or if you do want the rest of that information, you could just slim down your crosshair along with the XP and location changes. It's a really nice early modular mod for making Starfield's HUD exactly what you want it to be. But did you notice how tanky some of those enemies just were? One of the things I immediately felt when playing Starfield for the first time is that the game would really benefit from a lower time to kill. This both for you as the player, but also for enemies against you. And just one day into early access, we already have that mod. Less spongy enemies will overhaul how much extra HP enemies get. So by default in Starfield, enemies gain bonus HP per level. In addition to their typical high HP from just being a high level, they receive bonus extra HP on top of that. This mod will reduce how much that bonus HP is, effectively making it so enemies are going to feel like far less of a bullet sponge in gameplay. In real terms, I think this makes combat a lot more fun. I think using this mod coupled with a higher difficulty will create more tense combat encounters as both you and enemies die a bit quicker, but it's definitely not going to remove high HP enemies outright. Lots of enemies start going down in 1 or 2 hits for me, but you still get the occasional very buffed up enemy who did take some extra effort. But overall, I still think it's a really fun one. I'm excited for what additional combat mods we get in the future for Starfield because I think there's a lot modders can do with this system, but as of right now, this is definitely my favorite one. IconSortingTags will add in a variety of handy icons to the front of all of the miscellaneous items in the game. As of right now, it doesn't actually affect armor or weapons. This is really great because you could very easily tell what type of item something is. This could be in a menu or even just placed in the game world. It's super handy for manufactured resources in particular, so as long as you see this icon, you'll know, okay, this is something valuable that I may want to be looting as opposed to just random junk. And once you learn some of the icons, it just gives you a far easier time with looting, so you could immediately recognize what you actually want to take versus what you want to discard. But one of the big controversies during the review phase of Starfield was that planets have boundaries. After landing, you can only run so far. It is still typically far, like 30 minutes of running, but then you're going to hit a world edge and be required to travel elsewhere or just turn back altogether. But modders have fixed that also with the remove planetary tile boundary. This being a relatively simple INI edit, and it's going to make sure you never hit a border again. Another controversy that popped up during the same time was limited landing zones. You can land as many times on planets as you want, but only 4 landing spots will actually be saved at any given time. So if you land in a 5th place, you'll actually delete the first of those landing spots. The mod More Custom Landing Sites will up that limit up to 50, so you can have a variety of points of interest saved on a single planet at any given time. And honestly, both of these mods, I'm happy they exist. They definitely quell a complaint from some players, but I think for most people, once you actually get into the game, these don't really make that much of a difference. Both of these controversies seemed pretty silly to me. Planets are empty, and running around aimlessly until you hit the world border just doesn't really have that much appeal. There's not that much to find out there, especially on these distances. Although something that is genuinely a strange change with Starfield is grabbing time. In Bethesda games, you can interact with almost any item in the world. It's a big part about what makes these games so special. But in Starfield, you need to hold the grab key significantly longer to actually pick up and manipulate items. You can see it here. here, I'm holding the E key the entire time, but it takes an unusually long time for the item to actually be picked up. But of course, the mod responsive grabbing fixes that, making it take significantly less time to pick up objects in Starfield, and overall making the time far more in line with Fallout 4 and Skyrim. But perhaps the single most important Starfield mod I'll feature in this video, we also have Mr. Electric Visor. This will retexture the ground crew space helmet visor to look like Mr. Electric from Shark Boy and Lava Girl. A simply phenomenal mod that you are definitely going to be seeing in the background of my gameplay, and you could even use the visor for yourself if you want to. Starfield mods really just launched out of the gate, with us getting a ton of mods even in early access and even just from the first hour. I do have a sneaking suspicion that we do get official mod tools earlier with Starfield. There's just been so many things around paid mods with this game that make me think Bethesda has plans around this, and if there's paid mods, there has to be mod tools available, which means creating free mods also, and the Starfield script extender is already here. This of course being in an early version, but yeah, it's up already, although it comes with one pretty major caveat. SFSE supports the latest version of Starfield on Steam. The MS Store/Game Pass version is not supported. No making it so you can see files doesn't solve the problem. I tried to warn about this before Starfield even came out. I knew there'd be a ton of people playing on Game Pass, especially on PC, and one of the big issues with that is Game Pass doesn't have the same degree of modability compared to Steam or really any other platform you buy games from. So I'm very curious to see where things go with Starfield mods. I wouldn't be shocked if we hear news about official tools relatively soon, and we even have gotten confirmation that console mods are coming. But until then, get subscribed, because trust me, there is a lot more Starfield content coming, and check out this video on some of the most interesting hidden options I found while playing.